My name is Alexia Kalor, and I want you to think about how you felt every day in high school after having so much homework to do and participating in extracurriculars the day before. Throughout researching the topic of starting schools later and how it would benefit students, I conducted a survey that reached 30 high school and college freshman students to see if more people like me think they would benefit from later start times. I also interviewed my sister, who is now a sophomore in high school, who just had to get adjusted to an earlier school time. Which brings me to my first question. What time did your high school start? Mine started at 7:15, which meant I had to be up by 6 a.m. to have a full breakfast, get ready, and catch the bus. Most high schools across the country start before 8 a.m. That does not allow enough time for students to get the recommended amount of sleep. The recommended amount of sleep is 9 hours, but most students, according to my survey, get between 5 and 7 hours on school nights. Not to mention, the majority of students have extracurriculars that run into their homework time, which then runs into their sleep time. I don't know about you guys, but I was exhausted after practices and homework every day. This is normally how I felt in high school, especially in first period. While interviewing my sister, who just got adjusted to the early high school start time, she mentioned that her first class was always her worst because it was hard for her to focus. Being sleep deprived leads to so many school-related issues. For example, it makes it harder to focus, more likely to be late to class, not understand the material, and it increases the chance of getting into an accident so early in the morning when everyone is half asleep. But sleep deprivation does not just affect school life. Not only does sleep deprivation affect education, but it affects a teenager's health as well. I learned that sleep deprivation increases the chance of teenagers using cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol, as well as more severe forms of depression. This is another point that supports my claim that schools should start later to increase the opportunity to get more sleep. Now you may be wondering, why don't students just try to go to bed earlier? Well, throughout my research, I learned that teenagers have a hard time going to bed early because their melatonin cycle, which produces their sleep hormones, starts around 10 p.m. and ends around 8 a.m. This is why it is so difficult for teenagers to wake up this early. So if schools starting later will allow the students more sleep, why don't more schools start later? Some who are against the idea claim it could cause more problems for families of low socioeconomic status. It would be a hassle to get their children to school. To that, I say there should be campaigns to bring awareness to this issue and raise money for more transportation options that could go to every neighborhood that students live in. An article I found actually noted that after their schools changed to later starting times, the low socioeconomic families actually benefited from it. So although I think this is an important issue to consider, I think starting schools later will improve the students' health and education in the long run, which will improve the schools altogether. In order to get some more opinions, I pulled some data from my survey to see how other students felt about sleep affecting their education. The majority of students agreed that later school times will allow for more time to sleep, which plays a big role in their education. Overall, school starting later would benefit students more than early start times. My sister mentioned she dreads school now, as opposed to middle school, in which she started at 8:30 in the morning. She said it was easier to stay awake and she had a more positive attitude towards school. These examples prove that lack of sleep can make sitting in a classroom much harder. A student from one study said that she felt more awake and ready to do her work after her school started later. Teachers also reported that students seemed to be making less silly mistakes and they had a higher attendance rate. This is why I think school should start later. Thank you for listening.